from Michael Lombardo this year because he's had an illness in the family. Let's see what's been seen recently. Well, a lot of greater white-fronted geese in the area. I think even a few years ago, I was very happy to see one. I think we've been flocks of in the 30s and 40s. In the genus Answer, this is going to be the same genus as the snow goose and Ross's goose. You can see some kind of phenotypic similarities there. They look kind of similar. That was from Birds of the World, but Lonnie Garris, who many of you know, took this picture. Apio Lake, is that how you say it? I don't know the area, but there seemed to be a flock there in the dozens, which is exciting. So greater white-fronted geese around. Remember that our programs are co-sponsored by Muskegon County Nature Club. Thanks to you guys for helping with that. And our host library has always been gracious with the help of Kevin. Remember, we've had the Outdoor Discovery Network present for us in the past. And just remember to take a look at their calendar periodically if there's things that you might be interested in doing. They're doing some beginner burger stuff, which is kind of cool. They do some explore the sky stuff. Obviously, they have their programs for young folks and all that. So just remember to continue to check their programming as it can be excellent. Remember, it looks like I know most of the folks here, but if you're interested in nature and you're not a member of the Washtenaw Islands Audubon Society or Muskegon County Nature Club, to see some folks in the back there and we can get you set up. It's a great organization to be a part of. We're doing a lot of good stuff. Quick highlight from the newsletter done by Judy Manning. She did a piece on skunk cabbage. She talked about the northern flicker. She talked a little bit about why birds mob. She's got a cute picture in there of a mute swan that seems to be consuming a fish. She talks about a sharp-shinned hawk that's been around her house. And Lonnie Garris, you may remember, I read a little piece from him last time that was quite poetic. He wrote another article for the newsletter about his experience chasing the crested caracara. I think that was last month.
There's a hike this Saturday, isn't there? In Muskegon?
Oh yeah. And I'll get to that in just a second. Isn't it? We'll see. It's Cute Harbor Park, right? Yeah, I think I've got that on here. If not, then we'll have someone announce it. As many of you know, we did a vote in the fall about funding purple martin gourds at Ottawa Sands, and part of that funding was also tree swallow boxes, and Michael Lombardo has been very helpful. He did tree swallow research for years, and Brian Johnson has been helping us design these in a nice way. We've been getting students out there, and my son Malcolm and my students made this video about it, which is just a couple minutes long, so you can check this out.
At local park Ottawa Sands, we decided to put up 20 new tree swallow boxes to replace the old, outdated ones. Of course, there's an entrance hole, which is plugged to prevent anything else from trying to nest. These plugs will be removed when the tree swallows arrive. The hole is just big enough to let the tree swallows in, but not so big that a squirrel or owl can get in there.
We also have some ventilation holes to keep good interior temperature, as well as a large roof which prevents water from getting into the box. The roof also has gutters to help the water run off. The whole box has pretty large and wide floor to make sure it's not a curb for our little nestlings.
The design also has recessed floor and drainage bowls to make sure any liquid doesn't stay in and create a habitat for parasites. We also have a carabiner and a hasp, which keeps the lid closed. We can open the lid for easy monitoring and collection of data. Inside the box, we have cleats for the nestlings to climb up to fly away. And the box is so good that the tree swallow has already taken residence.
This is after you voted to fund it. You did all that. Bottle.
All of those just for Ottawa Sands?
Yep, 20. There you go. So Malcolm couldn't be here. He's at many of you know Malcolm, my son. He's at he's there on the left. He's at what is it? honors band event or something like that, so he couldn't make it. So thank you. What we want to do a better job of, I think, as an organization, we've talked a lot about this on the board, is just showing you, like, when you pay your dues, when obviously when you vote for these things, is where it goes. So we'll keep you updated on monitoring those tree swallow boxes. And Brian is going to help us ban them and monitor them over the next number of years, the tree swallows and purple martins. And Bruce had a good question. You can kind of see the gutters here, and this was suggested by Cornell Lab, and I did test this, like why they're not on the top, and it does seem as the water starts to run around, it'll stop there and run to the front, as opposed to coming like in here and getting the boxes wet. So, okay, we'll keep you updated on all that, okay? Upcoming field trip, right? Dune Harbor Park, March 21st. I believe that starts at 8:30. Does that sound right?
Yes, but
folks?
people should be aware that there is a pay per. You have to pay to use the park at Harbor Dunes. So you have to have a Muskegon County park sticker, or it's $5 for a one-time pass.
Wow. Okay.
Well, there are two entrances in the park. Make sure you go to the south
one.
entrance.
The one at the very south end, right?
Yes.
On the very south end.
Very
Seminole
good
Road.
point.
Yes, the one on Seminole Road.
Great. Thanks, guys. Bruce will give a quick update on Bird City. He's been making a lot of progress on that with the board.
Yeah, so Bird City is a actually worldwide event, but certainly Michigan Audubon's spearheading it here in Michigan, and a number of cities and villages, and actually now counties have been designated as a Bird City. And we're working on getting the Tri-Cities, so Grand Haven, Spring Lake, Perrysburg, on board. And Grand Haven has already passed a resolution. We've got on the agenda for Spring Lake for April, and then we're working on getting on Perrysburg, so they'll buy in. So the municipality has to be on board with being a bird city, and then we have to basically show what of the 80 requirements, the 10 that we actually have accomplished. They're reducing threats to birds. Cutting down on invasives, educating the public, basically being nice to birds. So we're a bird city. So hopefully that'll go through, and you'll see bird city designation signs on the websites, as well as maybe a couple of signs on the roads.
Hey, thank you, Bruce. And we'll keep you updated on that as well. April 21st, which is our final meeting of the year here, we're going to do Cindy's program. You may remember it was canceled in January. She's going to do a more beginner birder program. Also remember, on that day is the day you guys can bring anything bird related or nature related that you want to swap out. If you have extra books or t-shirts or mugs or anything, hopefully there's other people who want that stuff. And let's see, anything else there? We'll probably do our annual meeting right after. So if there's any business that we need to take care of, we'll do it right afterward. Though I don't think there is much this year. On Saturday, May 9th, which is World Migratory Bird Day, we're gonna, because Bonnie brought this up as a great point when we decided to get rid of this meeting for for May, which was our annual meeting typically. We want to make sure we're doing other events as well. So we'll do a Ottawa Sands event. It's still taking shape because we realized that Curtis is also running an event at Ottawa Sands that morning. So we have to kind of figure out the best thing. But in the absolute least thing that we'll do is we'll make sure there's a time for you guys to meet there, for us to look in the tree swallow boxes, see some nests getting going, if folks are interested in that. So you can see kind of where your money's been going. We could also take a look at the purple martin boards, and I may have some students come out there so they can start to get more familiar with record keeping on that. But at that point, we would just have nests in those boards and boxes. But that could be fun. So Saturday, May 9th, we'll let you know about the time. Very quick update. Cindy Dobrez, Beth Miller, and Susan Schmidt, their terms are coming to an end on the board. All would like to continue, so we'll probably send a vote out about that sometime in the next couple of months. Okay. If you want to be on the board, of course, let any of us know, and we can get you going. Okay. I just want to make a quick announcement. Lucas Timmer, as well as many people on the board and many other folks, including the Mannings, have done a lot of hard work on Park Township Airport, and they met with Tanner Bricker recently, who was doing a lot of the work to help us out, and we should have some prairie grassland in there by around 2030. They were hoping for a few years before that, but the invasives have just made it a little more difficult, including the infamous spotted knapweed. So that's been a challenge, but it should be okay in the next few years. Okay, any recent sightings? Call on. Beth, what'd you see? Tell us.
And Glenn thought you were talking about March Madness. So he's over here talking about, Tom Izzo. We had a towhee. Drink your tea.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And of course we have sandhills in the backyard.
Are you still hearing the great horned owls?
No,
Interesting.
completely shut down. Nothing.
Other folks, what have you seen recently?
We had affiliated this morning, which is unusual for our yard.
Cool. Yeah, Chad.
I had tree swallows in Berry County last week.
Okay.
And then that same morning, actually, I had a woodcock in my neighborhood, which was a big yard bird. In South Lansing, so it was kind of a surprise to have that.
And Brian, you saw a tree swallow, right? Was that at Lane's Landing?
Yeah, that was during last Monday's warm up. Oh, and it knocked up a lot of birds, everything up to fox sparrow and rusty blackbirds, woodcock, and that sort of stuff.
Oh, nice.
Well, with that storm though, Jason up at Minot had over 100 tree sparrows, another 50 juncos, 20 fox sparrows, another 15 song sparrows at his feeder. So these birds are hungry.
Wow,
It's time to
yeah.
keep your feeders filled.
Yeah.
We had a whole flock of tree swallows at our feeder this morning with juncos and Dan's identified them. They're there.
Nice. Cool. Yeah.
We had song sparrows and fox sparrows and also our first flock of starlings.
Oh, okay. And I gotta say, I know I said this at the board meeting, but I was fortunate enough to have that bird in the hand banding, I think last week when during the warm up, and it is a beautiful bird. It's not his fault it's invasive, but and then Bonnie, you said you guys had, would you and Dave have a lot of pintails?
25 pintail.
That's awesome.
We're on the river there, and there were 3-winged teal.
Cool.
There was one American widgeon, and there was a couple of golden eyes and buckle fabrication. So we're still having ducks. And now the puppy bucks are here.
You gotta tell us when the pelicans arrive too.
I'm watching.
Yeah. Thanks, folks. If there's anything else you want to add? Okay. Tonight's program, thanks, Chad, for driving all this way. The weather was a little bit touch and go. We weren't sure, but it cleared up a little bit. So he's going to present tonight on chimney swifts. And actually, if you want to come up, Chad, I'll read this while you get your computer going. Here we go. So Chad's first love is botany. He doesn't deny the intertwining nature of birds, plants, and insects, and all other organisms we share the world with. He's Michigan Audubon's conservation manager, and he's responsible for the management and care of all 20 of Michigan Audubon's sanctuaries around the state, and bird-specific programs such as Chimney Swift and Purple Martin Conservation. In his spare time, Chad enjoys tending to and expanding his native plant garden, collecting plant specimens, and learning more about our natural world. Thank you so much for joining us, Chad.
Thanks for coming out tonight. This is a great sized crowd. This past summer, I did a presentation. I did this exact presentation in Escanaba, and I had 3 people, one of which was my fiance. So really, I only had. Okay, so again, I'm Chad Mashinsky, Conservation Manager with Michigan Audubon, and I'm going to talk about chimney swifts. But first, I'll touch on Michigan Audubon's mission, which is connecting birds and people for the benefit of both through conservation, education, and research efforts in the state of Michigan. And to reiterate what Carl had said, I manage all of our bird sanctuaries in Michigan, all the way up to the Keweenaw Peninsula, which I don't get to often. 12 of which are open to the public. They range in size from 20 to 1,000 acres. And those ones that are open to the public have active habitat management on them. In addition, I handle our Purple Martin conservation programming and also our Chimney Swift programming.
Which one is 1,000 acres?
That would be the Hanley Sanctuary in Grass Lake. It's about 1,100. You have mostly marshland. So it's a great sandhill crane roosting site in the fall.
Are you okay with questions throughout, Chad?
If we can do questions at the end,
Yes.
I find that oftentimes I'll get to the questions at a certain
Yeah.
point. But if you ask a question, I'm not going to kick you out. Okay, so behold, the chimney swift, commonly known as a cigar with wings, due to its shape. This is a compact bird, 4.5 to 6 inches, with a wingspan of about double that. This bird is brown with a tan throat, and it weighs less than an ounce, which is about the same weight as a slice of wheat bread. So next time you're making a sandwich, you're like, wow, that's what a chimney swift feels like. That's amazing. So the chimney swift is in the family Potidae, which is Latin for roughly no feet. I don't speak Latin. That's just what I've been told. I don't know. Anyone in the audience Latin? Anyone? No? Okay.
That's correct.
Oh. All right. So, despite the fact that chimney swifts resemble in form birds such as swallows and martins, they're really not closely related to them at all. They're more closely related to nightjars and actually hummingbirds. So, although their family name means no feet, they do in fact have feet, and you can see this bird is clinging to a vertical surface, right? So they have feet that are classified as pamperdactyl. So they have 3 toes in the front and 1 toe that can rotate from the front to the back. This is a very cool feature that allows them to cling to vertical surfaces. However, the trade-off is that they cannot perch like normal birds. So this is a bird in its resting position. It's perfectly happy in this position, but you're never going to see it perching like you do a robin, a chickadee, or many other birds. So continuing with key features, the chimney swift has these bristle-tipped tail feathers. Very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to see in flight with your naked eye. But these little bristles actually help the bird cling to vertical surfaces. They push into the surface and create friction that allow them to attach a little better. I want to touch on their calls because this is one of the best ways to identify them. And in fact, this is one of the first birds I hear every morning in the summer when I wake up, believe it or not. Let's go with house sparrow, cardinal, robin, chimney swift. Those are the 4 birds I hear when I open my porch windows in the summer. I don't see them very often unless I'm looking for them, but you will hear them. And so it's very useful to hear their calls and understand their calls. It's important to know their calls because they're going to be flying all the time. These birds rack up a lot of miles. It's estimated that a swift will fly 1.35 million miles in a given year. And you can think that must be their migration. And that is a part of it. But these birds do everything on the wing, okay? They eat on the wing, they drink water on the wing, they bathe on the wing, they grab nesting material on the wing. So they're constantly flying. So again, it's really important to better understand their calls. I have some lookalikes. Again, I mentioned previously, they're not related to swallows. Things like barn swallows, they're going to have typically more of a forked tail when their tail is open. Tree swallows, they have white underbellies, iridescent on top. And what else do we see that the tree swallow is doing that we won't see a chimney swift doing? Perching normally. So if you see a bird doing that, probably not a chimney swift. In addition, people often think chimney swifts are bats. I've taken calls from very frustrated birders who are talking to other people watching chimney swifts, and the other person who doesn't know anything about birds is like, no, those are bats. I don't know what you're talking about. But they look very different in flight. So to borrow some botanical terms here, this is very much kind of an entire wing. You don't have the indentations like a bat does. I have only one time during a roosting event seen a bat flying with chimney swifts. It's very different. These bats are much more, they're heavy, they're clunky. Swifts are very smooth, okay? It's not, once you get an idea for their shape and their flying patterns, it's easy to tell them apart. The other important thing is that bats are nocturnal and chimney swifts are diurnal. So while there might be that kind of period at dusk where you might see both, you're going to be seeing chimney swifts going inside of a structure, whereas you're going to be seeing bats coming out of a structure. Okay? So let's talk about chimney swift diet. Like I said a few slides ago, these birds eat on the wing. They're aerial insectivores. And if it's an insect in the sky and it fits in their mouth, they're probably going to be eating it. And a lot of these are insects that maybe people don't like. Wasps, biting flies, mosquitoes, bees, even spiders can be up there. I know people, if you're afraid of spiders and you're like, thank God they don't fly. Terrible news, they're often flying, they get caught up in the wind and they're up there. So these swifts are eating a lot of insects, flies, caddisflies, stoneflies, and it's estimated that a single swift can eat 5,000 to 6,000 insects a day. Right? They're flying constantly. Think about their relatives, the hummingbirds, high metabolism, they're constantly getting sugar. Swifts, same way, except with bugs. Gotta feed that flying. So where are they foraging for these insects? Well, they're flying in the open sky, over wetlands, over rivers, over city parks, and over cities. Essentially anywhere where there's open sky. It's being better understood that the open sky is habitat that's full of life that isn't readily perceivable to us. I have been asked before, well, what are they doing up there? And I say they're catching insects. And say, oh, I don't see any insects up there. Well, you don't have very good eyes, and that's okay. These birds do. Okay, so we know that these birds are more or less everywhere in terms of habitat types, but what's their range? So these are neotropical migrants. So we can see them in Michigan, kind of starting in April, late April, and they depart Michigan in October. Now there's going to be some difference depending on where you are in the state. If you're in the Keweenaw Peninsula, they're probably departing a little bit sooner than October. And I saw my first swift in 2025 on April 27th in Lansing. So kind of that late April period. And they overwinter in South America in the northwest corner. They were first found after banding was done in the 1940s in Peru. But now it's understood that they overwinter in Venezuela, Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, and Brazil. I'm going to play this video. So this is a eBird relative abundance video. So it's going to happen really fast. So I'm going to just preface it before it starts. We're going to see this slider here progress through the year. So we've got our months here, and we're going to see a low yellow color moving up through here. And then as they're going to get all the way up here, and as the season progresses, we're going to see colors really change. Back in South America. Play it again, just so you can watch it. And if you notice where some of those really dark areas are, especially in the west and northern part of the country, let's play it one more time. So you can see Chicago dark, Cleveland, Detroit. Right? It's very dark in those spots. And this map here, this image shows predicted probability of occurrence of chimney swifts. The red is denser areas, and you see that they're kind of focused around cities. And that's, cities don't really seem like great places for birds, right? We're doing Bird City because cities are known to not be particularly hospitable to a lot of birds, but chimney swifts are very attracted to cities. And why is that? Well, they're not called chimney swifts for nothing, right? The chimney is their part of their habitat. They're roosting in chimneys and they're nesting in chimneys, right? This wasn't always the case. There was a time when chimneys did not exist, and they were nesting and roosting in caves or also old growth trees. But as Europeans colonized the Americas, began to remove a lot of our forests in the eastern United States and to cut down a lot of those old growth trees. However, what came in place of old growth trees was chimneys. And it's estimated that, or it's assumed that the first chimney swift nest in a chimney was in the late 1670s. And by the 1700s, they had almost fully moved to using chimneys, right? And it's thought that their populations actually increased as a result of European colonization because of a lot more nesting sites. It's a little oddity there, right? We're kind of used to birds declining as a result of European colonization. So I'm going to talk about how these birds use chimneys, and first starting with migration. So in spring and fall, these birds form these massive communal roosts in large chimneys and medium-sized chimneys. Most of the time people associate, or I tend to see events around chimney swifts in the fall. But this event happens in the spring, right? It's cold. These birds are seeking shelter together for warmth, and those are both things that they need in the spring and the fall. So there is safety in numbers, which is part of the reason they roost in these big aggregations, right? If there's 500 brothers and sisters next to me, I'm way less likely to get picked off by a sharp-shinned or Cooper's hawk. I have seen sharp-shinned hawks hanging out at roosting sites. And also in reports of herring gulls picking off chimney swifts at roosting sites. So the more there are around you, the less likely you are to get picked off yourself. In addition, like I said, you can really heat up the inside of a chimney with just body heat. If you've got 1,000 swifts all cramped in there right next to each other, you're more likely to stay warm. Here I'm going to play a video. This is from a site, actually a block from my house in Lansing. And, oops, go back. No, not that one. Flip through a little quick. There's going to be some clicking noises. That's me counting. Ooh. Starts to happen really quickly. When you get large numbers like this, and this is actually relatively small, this is about 150 swifts this night, but when you get even larger than that, it's much easier to count by 5. So the congregation and the pastor of this church that this is at are actually very familiar with the fact that their chimney is a roosting site for swifts and is very content with leaving it uncapped. You'll see that they do a lot of kind of these false passes. They peel off to the side. That makes it challenging to count. And there always ends up being a few stragglers. You think you're done, and then all of a sudden you hear a couple sounds, a couple calls, and then a few more appear, and you gotta wait for those to get your official count in. Didn't wait for those ones. And if that was a little fast, I'm gonna show you a slowed down video. This was taken by our director of research this past fall at another roosting site. So I love this because you can really get a view of them, how it can look like they're about to go in the chimney, but instead they just fly right past it. So that one just went in, that one just went down along the side, that one too. And it can be very challenging when you're getting hundreds or thousands of birds, and it's getting progressively darker. Lots of a fun little video. I'm glad he's much more capable with those types of things than I am. So that's roosting. Again, this happens in the spring and the fall, but you'll also see at certain chimneys that there will be roosting events all summer long, right? There's going to be unmated birds that need places to sleep. So, and I'll touch on that a little bit. But breeding I think is less well known about chimney swifts. So they begin breeding at 2 years old. During the breeding season, they're monogamous. They do not mate for life. This is just during the breeding season. And the pairs will perform this flying V, where they fly together in a V shape, calling and going downwards. This is their nest. This is the fallen nest. So it's a cup that's 2 to 3 inches, and it sticks to the inside of a chimney, okay? And this nest is held together by sticks and saliva. Yum. So this nest has fallen from the inside of the chimney. So normally this open area would be where the wall of the chimney is. And we're going to watch a video here of 2 swifts building a nest. So it's the inside of a structure, and there's a swift there with a stick in its mouth. It's perched upon the nest that it's building. Get it in the right position. It's got to be difficult doing this. You can only perch on vertical surfaces. Placing that stick, it's coughing up some saliva. In a little bit, we're going to see its mate come up from below, possibly unhappy with the placement of the stick. You can see they kind of flutter and walk up the wall. So this process can take anywhere from 18 to 30 days. It's a long process, right? And remember that swifts, they grab their nesting material in flight. So they are flying by trees with dead branches, dead little sticks, and grabbing them with their feet and maneuvering them into their mouth, all while in flight. So you can imagine that might take a little longer than your traditional nest building. The incubation takes 2 to 3 weeks. The young are born with no feathers and blind, and the chicks spend 14 to 19 days in the nest. So, still like many birds, despite being altricial at birth, 2 to 3 weeks, and they're ready to go. It's kind of crazy. And as we said, that an individual swift can consume up to 5,000 to 6,000 insects a day. So now you've got 2 adult swifts feeding potentially up to 5 young. So we're looking at over 12,000 insects a day for a mated pair in a nest. So now we're going to watch a quick video of that same nest, but now we're seeing swifts that have hatched and developed. So I've watched this video many times, and I've counted as best I can, and I believe there's 5 swifts in this nest. You can see that there are a couple that are a little more fully developed than others, and they're really clinging on to the side of the nest. As they get a little more feathered, they'll venture out to the sides. Mom or dad just came in with some insects, and they're screaming. And then they're quiet again. So what I think is really interesting here is, and what's commonly not understood is that we just saw there's one nest in that structure, right? So that's all that will ever be in a chimney or a structure at one time. You can take a 12-foot tall chimney or a 50-foot tall smokestack. There's only ever going to be one active nest at a time, okay? So even though you'll see 500 swifts going in to use a chimney at night, they're going in there to roost. They don't all have nests in there. They're just going in there to sleep, okay? A mated pair will not allow another mated pair to build a nest in their chimney, okay? So that's a very odd thing to think about, right? Because you think you see all those birds and they must all have nests in it. That's not the case. During the breeding season, there's only ever just one nest. So consider this. Let's say there's about 500 swifts in this photo. It's estimated that only about 60% of this adult swift population actually finds a mate and breeds. So let's say we have 500 here, that's still 300 pairs, or 300 birds, 150 pairs. That's 150 birds that all need their individual nesting structure, okay? Can you think of 150 chimneys in Grand Haven or in Grand Haven and Muskegon, right? So this could be a problem, right? Okay, so what have we learned so far about chimney swifts? They are nicknamed the sky with wings. They're not swallows and they're not bats. They eat insects. They are human dependent, right? We've kind of pushed them to being human dependent. They form these massive roosts and they only nest one pair in a chimney. So since they're human dependent, and I mentioned that their population has actually increased post-European colonization, chimney swifts must be doing well, right? Well, not exactly. These are common birds that are in steep decline. They have been classified as an Orange Alert Tipping Point species by the North American Bird Conservation Initiative 2025 State of the Bird Report, which is a step in the wrong direction from what they were rated before, a yellow tipping point species. So this means that not only have they had long-term declines, but they have had accelerated declines in the past 10 years, okay? And it's not just that report. U.S. Fish and Wildlife has designated them as a species of conservation concern. That doesn't provide any legal protection. And USGS considers them a species of greatest conservation need in 22 states. So this is their, again, their range map that is showing a percent change, their population trend between 1966 and 2015. And they have had a cumulative decline of about 67% across their range. Sure, they've expanded with some areas in the blue, but range-wide, they've mostly declined, okay? And if this trend continues, their current population will be halved in 27 years. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, this trend is not dissimilar from other aerial insectivores. That's that pink line here. So aerial insectivores are doing poor. And what's causing this? Well, there's usually never just one thing that's causing a problem, right? There's usually multiple things that are all contributing to a problem. So for example, so it's just a generic graphic here, but a decrease in food abundance due to insecticide use. And again, that will impact many aerial insectivores. Either totally eliminating certain groups of insects or poisoning insects, which can affect development of young, overall nest success, etc. And there was actually a study done, I think it was in North or South Carolina. So in one of these large roosting sites, they actually got inside of it and mined the poop that had accumulated over many, many, many decades of use. And they found a change in the insects that the swifts were eating. They're able to do some analysis on their poop. And historically, swifts had been eating coleopterans, so beetles. That was kind of their main insect of choice. And then there was a point where it changed. And that correlated with the use of DDT, which was heavily affected beetles, right? So then we started seeing swift diet switch to other insects, possibly not as nutritious, not really what the swifts needed. So just an interesting tidbit there. In addition, in their breeding range, we're seeing loss of nest and roosting habitat, right? A lot of older smokestacks are falling into disrepair. They're either getting shortened in height. I think I was driving around a little bit before I got here, and I think I saw a smokestack that's next to what's now a condominium that looks like it was probably reduced by 2/3. So we're losing these sites, right? And we're also capping chimneys, residential chimneys. Either we're shortening those in height, we're capping them, we're running natural gas venting through them, very typical. And even my own house that I rent in Lansing, I mean, we've got a chimney, but the water heater exhausts right through the top, right? In addition, right, these birds spend only a short period of time in North America, but South America, there's these issues as well, where they're still roosting in natural habitats, in trees and things like that. There's a lot of unsustainable logging going on. So, in addition, in North America, you know, a lot of new buildings just don't have chimneys, right? No one's heating their house with wood. And so not only are we eliminating their historical sites, but we're not building anything new for them to use, right? So I'm going to transition, talk a little bit about what Michigan Audubon is doing in this. Oops, sorry about that. This trackpad is very touchy. Okay, perfect. So, what is Michigan Audubon doing for chimney swifts? Some of those things that are happening are really, they're big issues, right? And so we're starting with some things. We've been doing this program for about 10 years now, and it's really based around these three things, right? Outreach, community science, and we just started research, which I'm very excited to talk about. So outreach can involve things like I'm doing now, such as presentations, okay? I do 2 to 3 presentations on chimney swifts a year. I've got one more this year. I've already got one scheduled for 2027, so I know everyone likes to get ahead like we talked about. But in addition, we do Swift Night Out events. So has anyone done or been part of a Swift Night Out? Couple hands, okay. So what's a Swift Night Out? This is a event, either spring or fall, where you find a known chimney swift roosting site and you have an event. You invite the public to attend, not just the Audubon members, but the whole public. In this case, it was just me and the Jackson Audubon Society, but we had a great Swift Night Out at Spring Arbor University. The chimney behind us is the chimney that gets used, and you have literature out there and information about chimney swifts, and you all watch the swifts go in. And it sounds very simple, but I will tell you it's very impactful. In Lansing, we did one last year for a week-long event. So every night I was out at a roost in Lansing, and we watched the swifts go in, and I hit the jackpot that year. It was close, but we had 500 swifts using this chimney every night. One night we had 1,000, and every time there's people who have never seen swifts do this before, and you're waiting for these birds to go in. It can take a while. You're like, gosh, come on, I gotta go to bed. It's almost 9:30. Like, let's get this going. And they start going in, and everybody is silent because everyone's amazed. You'll hear people go, wow. Like, it's a phenomenon. It literally looks like the chimney is sucking these birds in when you have that many. It's a sight to see, and it can be really powerful. You can invite your council people, your mayor, etc. You know, this can be a big deal. So I highly recommend it. Could be a great World Migratory Bird Day event. Now you guys already have something planned. That's what we're doing in Lansing again this year, May 4th through the 9th. Well, I'll be out at Smith Floral in Lansing watching that chimney. So, in addition, our community science management. So we have an online form where anybody, you guys, everyone in the next room, upstairs, whatever, you can report Chimney Swift roost and nest sites to our website. So we have this online form. You can access it on your computer, on your mobile device, and there's a series of questions. Some are required, some are not required. And whether that's you're doing a roost survey, you're letting us know what your location is, how many birds you're seeing going in, what the condition of the chimney is, as best you can tell. And all that information feeds this publicly accessible map. You can go to our website, click on the button that's there, and you'll see this, and you can click on any of these dots here, and it'll come up with information about the dot you clicked on. So for example, this is our Smith Floral site. This is one of the most well-known sites in Lansing. This is the information that comes up. So the form you submit feeds this map and gives us this information, and you can toggle through all the historical information. So there have been 23 submissions just for Smith Floral, and this is last May when we had 1,000 swifts. So that's our community science role in this. But now we're doing research. So this just started this past summer. Our director of research, Max Henschel, he wanted to incorporate some autonomous recording unit research into what Michigan Audubon is doing. So I'm going to refer to them as ARU for short, because autonomous recording unit gets hard to say after a while. So what these are listening devices, right? That you can set somewhere, set it for a period of time, forget about it, you collect it, plug it into your computer, run software through it, and it will identify whatever bird calls that you've asked it to do, okay? So we were in the office one day, and we wanted to use them for chimney swifts, but we didn't really know how, right? We wanted to do it, but what are we gonna do, you know? But we wanted to use it for breeding purposes. So identifying sites where chimney swifts are nesting can be challenging. So does anyone have any ideas about how you might identify a nest site for a chimney swift?
Someone is complaining that there's something in their chimney.
Yeah, that does happen, absolutely. But there is also a real survey method that can be done. So swifts don't enter chimneys during the day. They are only entering them at dusk to go to sleep. However, if they are entering them in the day, that is a sure sign that they have a nest in there, especially in June and July. In July, when nestlings have hatched and are wanting to eat, swift parents are going to be making a lot of trips in and out of a chimney, okay? But when I tell you that it's still hard to watch a chimney and wait for a swift to come in or out of it, I'm not lying. So you have to stare at the top of a chimney in the middle of summer for 1 hour. That's the protocol. And if you see a swift going in or going out, more than likely you've got yourself a nest. If you're lucky, you'll see that in the first 5 minutes and you can carry on. But the first year I did that, I think most of the time I was waiting at least 45 minutes. And, you know, some of these chimneys are at apartment buildings, sometimes schools, and so you're standing out there staring at a building for an extended period of time, you start to raise suspicion. So I was asked one time, like, what I was doing, sitting in my car watching apartment buildings. I had to explain what it was I was doing. So if we can avoid doing that, that would be ideal. So that's what we wanted to do. But how do you get one of those units in a 50-foot tall chimney?
Drones.
That's an idea, but do you want to drop a semi-expensive piece of equipment 50 feet down a shaft, hoping that it makes it okay? So, well, we figured, you know, chimneys most of the time have some sort of clean out mechanism at the bottom, a door, right? The chimney at my house, even though it's not used, there's still a door in the basement that is loosely attached. I can open. So we're like, well, just open up the door, slide it in, and bam, we got it. So we approached 6 people, 6 property owners in Lansing about this prospect. And it turns out, since many of these chimneys are no longer in use, a lot of them have that bottom access point cemented off. Okay, so we're kind of back to square one, except for one person, the owner of that Smith Floral and Greenhouse, one of the most well-known sites in Lansing. He said, yeah, I think it's closed off at the bottom, but there's another access point if you guys want to check it out. And so we met with him, great guy. He's from Syria where they have common swifts, and he loves those. So he was so excited when he learned that he had chimney swifts using his chimney. Great guy. And he was more than happy to show us this area. So this is a building attached to the chimney we were just looking at. And what you see here is where we're in the old boiler room. And this would be where the exhaust from the boiler enters the chimney. So it wasn't cemented off, but it was boarded up, and it was about 15 feet off the ground. So Max and I had to figure out, okay, how are we going to get this? So we hatched a plan. So that's our director of research there. I guess, you know, you get your PhD, you're still going to end up getting on a ladder using a sawzall, cutting into chimneys. So we decided we'd make a door and hope that whatever was on the other side of it was the inside of the chimney. Really didn't know, okay? And 2 sawzall blades later, we did cut through. Unfortunately, half of it was covered in brick, but this worked out. We didn't want it to be a big hole that we could fall into. We just wanted to be able to stick our heads and arms in there. And so that's what we wound up with. And that's the inside of Smith Floral Chimney looking up. It's much brighter in there than I thought it was going to be, I'll tell you. And this is the side of the chimney. Now, I don't know when this chimney was built, but presumably it's been being used as a swift roosting site for 50 years. So a lot of what you're seeing is swift poop covering the walls. But does anyone see anything else? So we see there's 2 old nests here, which we were very ecstatic about. What are the chances that right where we cut into the chimney, we're going to see where nests are? And that seemed to be, you know, kind of the spot over maybe a couple of years where they're building their nest. So that was very exciting. We put the ARU on a little platform. Now it's not just resting there. There's a bolt that runs through it, and the ARU kind of screws down onto it. And we set it there for a couple weeks at a time throughout the summer. And actually, the first time we pulled it, there was swift poop like right on where the speaker is, so we knew that there were still swifts using it. And so all in all, we had 600 hours to comb through. That's Max's job, not mine. And what did we find? Well, we found this. So this is the graph that Max made. On the x-axis, we have time of day. On the y-axis, we have a number of detections, sound detections. So not number of individual birds, that would be impossible to tell from this, but this is sound detections. And so we established a couple things from this. First off, we learned that Smith Floral is used as a roosting site through the summer. And how do we know that? Well, we're getting a lot of detections, a lot of calls are getting made right around dawn. So these birds are just getting active. They're moving around, they're calling. And then we have a bit of a lull, and then we have a spike at sunset, right? So these are swifts going back in, and these are more than what an individual or a pair of swifts is going to do, okay? Which was great information to learn, because nobody goes out there in the summer to do a roost survey. But what we're interested in, what was going on here, right? We wanted to know, are swifts going into this chimney during the day, which would be indicative of nesting behavior. And what do we see here is that we do have detections, okay? I like this one. They're very consistent over the couple days here. Each line is a day, right? And we're seeing non-zero. If there were 0 calls, it would just be one flat line all the way across here. But we're getting detections. So now we know that Smith floral chimney is also used as a nesting site, which is exactly what we wanted to see. So we're hoping to do more of this research this year, and we're actually it's gonna be kind of twofold, is that we're gonna put it in very early because we want to know when Swifts first arrive at the chimney, and we're gonna leave it in there for as long as possible to see when there are no more Swifts in the chimney. And we'll continue to trial our nest detection. As far as we know, that's kind of a novel use of an ARU, which we're very excited about, and we hope to use it in a couple other chimneys that we've identified that we do have access to. So that's research. And that's kind of what Michigan Audubon is doing. Now I'm going to talk about what everyone in this room can do, okay? So, first thing, might be a hard thing to swallow. Uncap your chimney from April to October. Unless your chimney is lined with metal, don't do that. It will become a death trap for your Swifts. You can recap it come winter and uncap it again in the spring. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Gee, Chad, you're a pretty young guy. I bet you don't own a house, which you would be correct. And if you did, I bet you wouldn't uncap your chimney. No, you just don't get it. And, you know, I totally understand. But I did as close as I could possibly get to doing that. So who's been out to the Otis Farm Bird Sanctuary in Hastings? Anybody been out there? People? Okay. So we have a house out there at Otis Farm. And it has a chimney. And this chimney had previously had this, it's hard to see in this image, but a cage put over the top, some kind of spark arrestor. This is not an active chimney in any way. And for the first couple of years that I was with Michigan Audubon, I did get a few questions about this. You guys like chimneys, so why don't you uncap your chimney? I kind of was like, you know, we don't have anyone living out there at the house right now. Like, I'm a little hesitant to do it. It's also a very large, actually you can see in this image here, a large cottonwood overhanging the house. And some studies have said that you really got to get your trees away from your chimney if you want Swifts to be using it. Swifts don't seem to like trees overhanging the chimney. So I kind of was like, I don't know. I probably would do that. Well, then one day this past spring, I was out there working near the house, and what did I hear? I heard some Swifts calling, which is pretty rare out there. I don't hear a lot of Swifts when I'm out there. I think I had one detection, one observation on eBird for the past 3 years. But then I saw that they were making passes and attempts to enter the chimney. So I said, okay, I'm going to take that cap off today. And so I precariously got on the roof with help of a volunteer. This is a metal roof. I don't know if anyone's been on a metal roof, but they are extremely slick if you don't have the right footwear. So it was a bit of a challenge getting the spark arrestor off the top, but I got it. And then I'm going to play this very short video. Believe it or not, this is the middle of the day. It was an extremely overcast day. And this is going to happen really fast, so don't blink. That was a Swift leaving the chimney. And on follow-up visits, right where I was standing, I could hear nestlings making begging calls. I knew that there were Swifts in there. But, you know, there's always that nagging sense of, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe there isn't actually a nest in there. So I wanted to get up there and put a camera down in there. And so I did that in September, got on the roof in a much more safe manner. I put an endoscopic camera down the chimney about 15 feet. And what you're seeing here is a nest. So this is if you're looking straight down the chimney, that's the nest. A lot less clean than that stick cup nest that we saw before, but remember this now survived a season of potentially five nestlings pooping in it, and if you've cleaned out a nest box before, you know that nests tend to get a little dirty and funky in there. So, and there was white streaking of poop all up the wall. And so, no, I don't own a house, and I can't uncap my chimney, but I did the best I could, and I put our money where our mouth was, and we have Swifts nesting on one of our properties, which is an exciting thing for us. We're very happy about that. So another thing that you might be able to do is build a nesting tower. You'll notice the text is a little hard to read because it's over an image, but I have a question mark at the end of that. Bit of a qualifier here. So if you've never heard of or seen these structures before, so these are about 14-foot tall structures for nesting swifts. They were developed in Texas by a couple with the last name of Kyle. They're kind of really the first people to really get swift conservation going. And this design was promoted after they tweaked it many, many, many times. And a lot of these were built. In Lansing, we have probably around 6 of them. There's several in Minneapolis and in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, etc. And in Lansing, they've been up for about 10 years, and we've not had a single swift nest in that. And that goes the same for Minneapolis and Minnesota and Wisconsin. However, in Pennsylvania, they are wildly successful. Okay? So it's not fully understood why. There's some ideas that we're just a little bit too north for the current design to work. It maybe just doesn't stay warm enough during those the spring nights, right? And I used to say, my next click on this slide would be a big X going through this, because we kind of stopped promoting building these. Also the Wisconsin Chimney Swift Working Group on their website was like, we don't support these anymore. But then this year, after 10 years, a site in Wisconsin finally had a nest, okay? So I softened up a little bit about it. In addition, we have one at our Capital City Bird Sanctuary in Lansing, where I saw swifts making passes at it. I checked it after the season was done, and there were no nests. So we're going to make some modifications this year, and we're going to see if that might work. So if you have a knack for building and a little cash that you don't mind maybe burning, you're more than welcome to try some of these designs, okay? Or, if you've got a lot of money, you can build something like this. So, this is in Manitoba, Canada, which is edge of range for this species. The Manitoba Chimney Swift Initiative developed these with the government, the province there. And these have been very successful in Manitoba. These are very robust structures. They're 3 stories high. I looked at this image so many times before I ever realized that there was one right here, which puts it into scale. So it's right next to that building there. They're built in 3 large sections. There's a thick concrete pad, there's drainage, a human can fit inside of this, right? And when I was communicating with the person who worked on this project, they were very reluctant to even give me a price. As he said, well, you know, government projects can be really just exorbitantly and unnecessarily expensive, blah, 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 blah. But eventually somebody got a price range out of him, and it's somewhere in the $30,000 range. So a little cost prohibitive, and maybe just not really worth it. But in Wisconsin, a well-known roosting site at a middle school, the school is being torn down, and along with the chimney. But the Southern Wisconsin Bird Alliance has worked with the school board and such that they're going to build one of these as a replacement to the chimney they're going to tear down. So I'll be excited to hear how that works and what the actual cost is. These have not been built outside of Manitoba, to my knowledge. So maybe they're way more cost effective. I don't know. So you can build those structures, but maybe a cheaper thing for you to do is to volunteer to monitor, right? We have this reporting form on our website, so you can scout for potential new roosts. It's still winter. There's only been a handful of Chimney Swift eBird reports in the continental U.S. Now that we're inching into spring, I like to check to see where they're at. So there's still time to kind of rack up some potential roosting sites. You can then take those, and once swift season really kicks in, you can have a swift night out at these sites, or you can do regular monitoring of them. And you can also monitor those sites during the nesting season. I know I really didn't sell it very well, but you know, an hour of your day, we can do it. We can. So this is our interactive map on our website. In total, we have had 461 roost surveys done across our sites, and that's not individual roost sites, that's surveys submitted. And just for reference, I didn't point this out earlier, but blue dots are confirmed sites, orange dots are potential sites, so pretty much any uncapped chimney, and green sites are nesting sites. I know I was saying, you know, I did this presentation at Escanaba, and I only had 3 people, but I've probably got more nesting sites identified in Escanaba, thanks to a very dedicated person there, than I do in any other state or any other city in the state. So we have 212 potential roosting sites and 77 confirmed nest sites. And while we're looking at this map, and while we're here in Grandhaven, let's take a little look here. All right, so we got a few confirmed roosting sites here. I will say that these are all the same. This is probably 2 sites. This is a residential house. That's also a residential house. I don't know, I should reach out to this person, but they reported that they've had chimney swifts nesting in their chimney since 2013. So they've reported that to us 3 times. So let's take a few closer look at a few of these sites. So Trinity Health, Grand Haven Hospital, I think formerly Ottawa Community Hospital, correct?
North Ottawa.
Yeah. The engine power components building or string of buildings. And then kind of across the street, there's several buildings here, but I just went with the Ascent Care as the main business. That's what's there now. These are all just pulled from Google Maps. Anyway, so there's Swifts here, but I know that there's a lot more sites, right, for both roosting and nesting sites. So one thing I do sometimes when I'm feeling very interested in Swifts, which is a lot, I'll peruse Google Maps. You can kind of get an idea of where some roosting sites might be by doing an aerial satellite view. So there's this building here on, I think this one's relatively close.
Corner from here.
Yeah. And then there's the First Reformed Church on Washington Avenue. Lakeshore Middle School, there's this outbuilding here. So this is a perfect example. This is a chimney here. You can tell I look for something that's casting a shadow, and that's generally dark in the middle. If this chimney was capped, you would not have this dark spot in the middle. You would still see the shadow. But, so schools, like pre-1980s schools, churches, government buildings, post offices, older factories, those are all good places to check for large chimneys. But again, residential chimneys are great spots and more likely going to be nesting sites than roosting sites. But I drove past a lot of houses today that look like they have uncapped chimneys. So, you know, this is my call to you guys to identify these sites, to help us try to help Swifts and identify some of these sites, because if we don't know where these sites are, we can't really protect them effectively, right? The next step, you know, the next dream is trying to get local ordinances to do certain things before chimneys can be capped or torn down, right? Especially in nesting season. It's really hard to do anything during migration, right? Roosting sites of any bird are not really protected, but nest sites are protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So if we know that a chimney is being used for nesting in the summertime, we should be able to, one, be able to prove that and halt it from happening, right? And the more historical information we have, if we can show that for 10 years, the site has been used as a nesting site, I think that says something. In Canada, the species, since its edge of range, I think is listed as threatened or endangered. If it's been used as a nesting site for 3 consecutive years, it can't be torn down. Okay. Those are the kinds of things that we should be considering and trying to push in our local municipalities if we can. So, but we can't do that if we don't know the sites that are being used, right? So, that's my presentation on chimney swifts. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take as many questions for as long as the library is open.
If bats are using the chimney, will birds use it too?
It's a good question. So I don't have a good answer for that, and I'm curious. So the bats are going to be like a chimney. The column of a chimney is not really a good place for a bat. It's too open. So what's probably happening is that if a bat is going into your chimney, it's getting into another place of your house or the structure. And so having your chimney repaired would probably be helpful in that aspect, if possible, because bats like really enclosed spaces. And I don't know that they really use like the open column of a chimney. I can't say for certain that is
Well, that building that you showed on the upper left,
Mhm.
it used to be a fire department, and then it's been used for other things. But one night when I was downtown, and I was probably maybe at the library, the building next door, and I happened to be right along there in the evening, and I saw just a whole bunch of bats coming out of that, on the, well, sort of right in the center there.
Could it be possible that they're actually, I don't know, I'm not familiar with this building, so are they using this structure here, or are they actually coming out of the chimney? Either way, I would say that there's probably another, there's somewhere else that the bats are getting into, would be my guess.
Oh.
So, yeah.
I saw it. I mean, it was in the evening, and just a whole bunch of them came out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be something on the interior, another connection to the building. I'd be interested. I'd love to shadow a chimney repair crew for a while, just to better understand what they see and what they deal with. Yeah, it is a curious thing, and there are other concerns, legitimate concerns that people have about leaving their chimney uncapped, right? Other animals getting in there, raccoons and things like that. And I don't always have a good answer for those things. It's been proposed to add, like for, let's say, raccoons or squirrels or mice, that can very easily climb up a brick structure, adding 2 to 3 feet of metal flashing around the top of your chimney, not unlike what you would do for predator protection on like a tree swallow pole, right? Or something like that. That doesn't answer the bat question, but just putting it out there. I'm very sympathetic to the concerns of other animals inhabiting, but I assume they'll still use it if bats are in the vicinity.
It's funny you bring this up. The Muskegon Club is probably going to put up a Chimney Swift tower in it sometime. Okay, it's sort of a project.
Mm-hmm.
It will be on the wastewater properties, which you may not be familiar with, but sort of like an open area.
Yep.
There's a couple of places that we've been thinking about, and that I'm glad that's the design in which there seem to be several of those near schools. And one of the things we were thinking, maybe with schools, they had students doing something to maybe attract, maybe they ran a tape or something to attract, because if you just stick this thing in the middle of a field, how long is it going to be?
Sure.
Before
Yeah.
something, you can answer anything. The other thing we were wondering about too, there just happens to be a kestrel box on the side of this approximately 1 acre area.
The library will be closing in 30 minutes. All public computers will be shutting down in 15 minutes. Thank you.
There's a kestrel box on one side of an approximate acre, open acre among copses of trees.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been thinking, that might not be the best idea of a place to put a chimney swift tower if there's a kestrel. So,
Yeah.
But anything you'd say in terms of that, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Generally with the towers, so the one thing with these ones, when I was speaking with the gentleman who helped install these, and he was saying, don't bother building any tower unless you know that there's swifts in the vicinity. I know you're not building. You're not building one of these.
No,
right?
we don't have that. But we know. Yes, there are swifts there. Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
So that's your first step. Like knowing that there's swifts around.
Yeah.
That's a better sign. If you were way out somewhere and didn't know.
There's swifts there.
Yeah. So that's a good sign. You can certainly try one of these. So the one thing that we're gonna try this year is You can see it here translated to this. So this is the top, and then right here. So this is what's called a sun collar, and its purpose in the design is to, well, one, it narrows the opening. First off, say that, narrows the opening. But the idea of its design was that it prevents excessive sunlight in the middle of the summer blasting down into the chimney and possibly affecting nesting success. So the one thing that has dawned on me more recently is that we have a different sun than they do in Texas. It's 10 degrees lower in Michigan in the middle of the summer than it is in Texas. So I don't know that, like the angle of the sun, right? So I don't know that we necessarily need this sun collar, which would then widen the opening and perhaps be more attractive to swifts. Now, again, these get used in other states, more southerly states. But that's the first thing that I think of. Like, why are swifts checking this tower out, but they're not using it? Are they not comfortable with the access of this tower? So we're going to try to remove the sun collars on ours. The Kyles who designed these, I kind of ran this by them, and they were like, don't do that. But I'm going to try it anyway because they're not using it now, so, what does it matter?
Do you know if the ones in Pennsylvania where they're successful have those on?
Yes, great question. So I finally talked to the person. They have a Chimney Swift camera in their towers, which I am happy to share with you guys so you guys can be aware of it. And they have 4 towers. The lady I spoke to, 2 of them have been recent, like within the past 3 years. Those 2, they do have the sun collars. But the first 2 she built that are almost 20 years old now do not have sun collars. And it took several years for them to get used, but have had swifts in them for the past 15 years. And they just don't have sun collars on them. So it tells me that they're not necessary, right?
Yeah.
The swifts aren't going to be burned alive by getting hit with direct sunlight. So that's kind of my thought right now. So we're going to try that. And your other question was regarding
About the
kestrel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a valid concern. I don't know if a kestrel would go after a swift. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. I mean, mostly from my own experiences and from what I've heard from other people, is it's usually sharp-chin hawks, Cooper's hawks, great horned owls, and a couple incidences of herring gulls. I don't know if it would deter swifts from using the site. I really don't know. So I know that's kind of a non-answer.
That's a good answer. Good answer.
Yeah. Yes.
I have 4 of them.
Okay.
One, do you, either the Michigan Audubon or the Lansing Audubon chapter, do you post the dates of your Swift nights out like at Smith's Floral?
Yeah, so on the Michigan Audubon events calendar, it's on there right now, May 4th through May 9th.
Okay.
Yeah.
2, are numbers about the same at the roosts in spring and fall?
Good question. We don't have enough data to say yes or no. We're still trying to figure that out. So last year was the first time we really did spring counts. And like I said, at least 500 a night for that week. When I've had less success there in the fall. I actually did my first Swift night out there in 2024, and I had like 70 people, and I had 0 swifts in August. So that was a tough one to swallow. But then last year we did one in the fall, and we only had 100 in September specifically. We only had 160 swifts. Then I went back in October and had about 600. So trying to figure out exactly how swifts are using that site. And there have been studies done. There's a study in Asheville, North Carolina, where they looked at 5 or 6 roosting sites, and they saw that there was certain roosts would get used in the spring, they wouldn't get used in the fall. There was only one roost that was continually used all season long, from spring to summer.
What you said is, relates to the third question because, you mentioned October as the go home time, but then you just mentioned
Right.
August. And when we've had, locally invitations to like watch chimneys and stuff, it's often been like around mid-September. And by then, we have not been seeing the Swifts circling in our neighborhood for several days at that point, so.
Yeah. So it's going to be a lot of trial and error. So Washtenaw Bird and Nature Alliance, they do a 3-day Chimney Swift blitz. Sorry, I should actually say that's the city does that. They use WBNA as their people to do the counting, and they do their blitz at the end of August, and they get really good numbers, like 1,800 at their most well-known nesting site. Yeah.
And then the final question is, with all of these industrial chimneys, the big ones, the roosting sites on the decline, how do you circumvent that? Like, what's the plan to help them with that since those chimneys are going away?
Yeah, I don't have a plan. It's a very good question, and it's one that I am legitimately concerned about, and other groups like Wisconsin Chimney Swift Working Group is concerned about. I have started to focus. I really want people to be more concerned about nesting sites, primarily. I'm not saying don't worry about these large sites, but we need to make sure that these birds are able to reproduce, right? But really to answer your question, I mean, again, it kind of comes back to getting involved with your local municipality, showing proof that these are sites that need protecting because birds are using them as important stopping points in their migration, right? And if you can do a Swift night out and bring in 10s or 20s of people, that says something, right? It's challenging. I don't have a good answer. I don't have a plan for how to stop a commercial enterprise from demolishing a chimney. And oftentimes you don't hear about it until it's too late. The process is too far along. And that's, I think, where it's going to be important to get your municipality involved. So,
Thank you so much.
Just two questions.
Yeah.
The nesting towers in Pennsylvania, are they the Kyle?
So the person I spoke to who has 4 of them, all 4 essentially are the Kyle, except for the 2 that don't have the sun collars on them, and those have been successful for a really long time. I should actually take that back. One of them is attached to an existing building, so it almost functions as a false chimney. Which is another idea. If anyone knows any architects, I'd be very interested in trying to develop some sort of false chimney that gets attached to new builds, as an aside. But, and then the other ones that are being built in Pennsylvania, there's a person who's experimenting with, he's building, 100 different towers, variations. It's not an individual, he works for the state. They have a grant to do this, is my understanding. And they're trying to really hone in on, what designs work and what designs don't. But they're all kind of variations on the Kyle Tower, is my understanding.
The other question I had had to do with I know there's a decline in insects, but have you looked at the species of insects at the various times of the year?
Yeah, I'm not aware if anyone has, but that's a great question.
Match the hatch,
Right.
Kind
Yep.
of deal.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yes.
I was wondering, and you're talking about the tower that was attached to the building. Have any of the towers been built on top of buildings?
I think they did that in Wisconsin on a few sites, and I don't think it resulted in them being used. But it is a good idea, I think, because it gets it above, the roof line. If you're building this right next to your house, it's not a very inviting, and by next to your house, I don't mean attached to it, but next to it. It's not really an inviting spot because you want to avoid having a site where it might look like predators can access the top of your structure, right? And And so building one of these under a dense canopy of trees isn't going to be necessarily a good site. So I would think building it on top of a building would make it a little more enticing, but it hasn't yet. So, yeah.
I've heard of cities that have areas of buildings that have green roofs.
Mm-hmm.
Have they ever tried a tower like that on a green roof?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah, not that I'm aware of. But, yes.
Yeah, to me, a chimney is not a really great place to be a rooster or a place to nest because people burn fires in them. So how do the chimney, can they tolerate a lot of smoke in these buildings?
So typically, it's the fair question. Their appearance in Michigan tends to correlate for the most part when people aren't really using their chimneys anymore, right? So, you know, is it possible that there were like die-offs of swifts because you had a cold April and or a cold May and you started a fire? Possibly. I don't know. It's a good question. Or if you're into October, you know, what are they doing? I don't know. Especially at a large roosting site in October, like, you know, that chimney at Smith's Floral, that was used to heat a greenhouse. So they're gonna probably be running those boilers. That's a little different because that's steam, probably, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. That's also the moral of this presentation.
Quickly, that is not the color of a chimney in Michigan normally? Have you done anything with painting them more red or darker brown or anything?
Not that I'm aware of in Michigan, but there's a lot of, I should have brought it. I have a handout of kind of a lot of different variations on a tower. There have been ones where, you know, you paint a mural on it, you know, whatever. I think this was chosen just because it's it's siding, it's cheap material, etc. But yeah, I mean, there might be a lot of different paints and colors and things that.
Just wondered if anybody tried, you know, to see it made any difference.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, but it could.
Sorry to continue on this theme, but we're trying to solve the problem. I guess I'm a little confused why they don't make them out of brick.
I think
because you said that you're concerned maybe about the heat retention in Michigan. I mean, in Michigan specifically.
Right. I don't have a good answer for that one. I know. I mean, if you're buying new brick, it's probably more expensive, and you also have to be able to. I mean, I've never laid brick before in my life, but there are people who do it as a job, and so I don't know. You know, it requires some skill, and it's going to be a little bigger and a little more involved than something like this that it's built modularly, like this, 3 sections. It'll just be like a ladder, essentially, to do it. Brick, you might need scaffolding, and you're going to need mortar and all that jazz. So, yeah, I mean, you could use recycled if you can get on Facebook Marketplace. People are always getting rid of brick. You got to clean all the old mortar off of it, but I thought about it, you know, so. Yeah. Any other questions? I can talk all night. So.
Yeah. So you showed us the relationship between that and how they look with swallows, but I would think I would be more confused maybe with a nightjar, nighthawk.
Yeah. So nighthawks, it's actually interesting. Sometimes in the fall you'll see a handful of nighthawks moving in the same shot as chimney swifts, much larger. Very difficult to confuse them, in my opinion, just because of the size difference. Yeah, much more curved to the outline.
The library will be closing in 15
Yeah, there have been 2 or 3 instances where I've seen a couple of nighthawks as I'm watching swifts, which is always fun to see. So,
Okay, thank you, Chad.
yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month for Cindy Dobrez.
Yeah.
And then maybe on May 9th at Ottawa Sands, but we'll give you more detail about that.
So the hospital, is they're actually working on right.
Yeah. They're getting it now. It'd be less disruptive. It's none about like how it's wrapped around or mechanically, exactly how it shook out.